I am a woman. I am a woman of a fierce green place. My brows are mountains. Tendrils of winding rivers coil through my hair, short, muddy black, with rapids and meanders. You may drink at the springs of my eyes. I sing many songs. I am silent only when the winds turn upon me. Sometimes, for fear, I shiver. Winds rumble in my belly, blow hot, blow cool. Paths vein my hands, well trod. Each year, after the rains, I blossom. Kingdoms grow in my dark womb.
That was Island Woman, a poem by Pamela Mordecai. Thank you, Pamela. Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the launch of Pamela Mordecai's two collections of poetry, The Book of Joseph and A Fierce Green Place. And we have given the name of the launch, Walk a Short Way with This Sistering. My name is Rachel Mosley Wood. I'm head of the Department of Literatures in English at the University of the West Indies. And we are extremely pleased to be able to host this launch for Pamela. Pamela is, like family. She is a former employee of the University of the West Indies at Mona, having worked as publications officer in the Faculty of Education. So we consider her family. And of course, there are also some family connections with the department. So we are really very pleased to be able to do this launch for her, and pleased as well to do the launch because as the Department of Literatures in English, we take our responsibility to encourage reading and to support writers, poets, writers of fiction, novelists. We take that responsibility quite seriously. So we're happy to be here and we welcome you. As we think about our responsibility to our various communities, I just want to take a few moments to pause to remember Professor Gordon Rollier, one of the foremost cultural and literary critics of Caribbean literature and popular culture, who died recently. So let's just take a moment to pause to remember him. Thank you. Rest in peace, Prof. Okay, so as I said, that was Pamela Mordecai reading Island Woman. And let me tell you a little bit about Pamela Mordecai. And I should actually say Dr. Pamela Mordecai, but she's given us permission to just call her Pamela this afternoon. So Pamela has published 9 collections of poetry, 5 children's books, and a collection of short fiction, Pink Icing, released as an audiobook read by herself in ECW Press's Bespeak audio editions. In 2015, her debut novel, Red Jacket, was shortlisted for the Rogers Writers' Trust Fiction Award, one of Canada's 3 top prizes for literary fiction. In 2014, she was a fellow at the prestigious Yaddo Artists Colony in upstate New York, and she is a recipient of the Institute of Jamaica's Centenary and Bronze Musgrave Medals. Her poetry has been translated into French, Spanish, Romanian, and Serbian, and featured on media in the Caribbean, Canada, the UK, Europe, and Australia. The recipient of the first Vic Reed Award for Children's Writing in 1993, Mordecai is well known internationally for her children's poems, which have been widely anthologized as well as used in language arts curricula in the Caribbean, in Canada, Hungary, India, Malaysia, the USA, the UK, and West Africa. And an anthologist with several collections to her credit, she has a special interest in the writing of Caribbean women. She has published numerous language arts textbooks for the Caribbean, most of them with the late Hayden Richards and the late Grace Walker Gordon. Her play for children, El Numero Uno, or The Pig from Lopinot, had its world premiere at the Young People's Theatre in Toronto in 2010, and its Caribbean premiere at the Edna Manley School for the Performing Arts in Kingston in 2016. With her late husband, Martin, she wrote Culture and Customs of Jamaica in a series edited by Peter Standish for Greenwood Press. A trained language arts teacher with a PhD in English, she was for many years publications officer in the Faculty of Education at UWI Mona and publications editor of the Caribbean Journal of Education. She has worked in media, especially television and publishing. She lives in Toronto and has 3 children and a granddaughter. A video collection of her poetry read by herself and available to the public is archived at Memorial University of Newfoundland's Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning and the Digital Library of the Caribbean. We have an exciting program lined up for you this afternoon, and we are going to move straight into it. I know you don't really want to hear me. So next up, we are going to have a poetry reading with a selection of poems from the Book of Joseph and a Fierce Green Place. And Pamela is going to read with Owen Blacka Ellis. I don't know that he needs any introduction, particularly to our local audience, but I'm going to tell you about him anyway. So Owen Blacka Ellis is a writer, educator, and artiste. He has worked all over the world as actor, musician, motivational speaker, workshop facilitator, and educator. But Ellis is known mostly for his over 3 decades of work as a leading stand-up comedian. He is one of the powerhouses behind the success of popular Jamaican television series, the IT and Fancy Cat Show, a project he worked on as principal writer and co-producer, as well as making cameo appearances in some of the skits. His film and TV credits also include memorable appearances in Warner Brothers' Club Paradise. I did not know that, Blacka. I have to go back and look at that film. ABC TV's Going to Extreme, Keystone Family Pictures' Spy Mate, and the Jamaican blockbuster Dance Hall Queen. That one I remember very well. As a comedian, he has performed at the world-famous Apollo Theater in New York, the Hackney Empire in London, and at major comedy festivals all over Europe, North America, and the Caribbean. He has written scripts for major national events, published 2 books of poetry, co-authored a manual on men and their families, and wrote a column for The Star for 14 years. He's currently a senior lecturer at the Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts, and acting head of department for the School of Arts, Management and Humanities. I now ask Pamela and Blacka to just go into their recitation of the selected poem.
Pam, your turn.
Blacka, I am most privileged and I'm so grateful to you for agreeing to read these things with me. Most privileged, most privileged. So we better get started because I would like to read poems from each of the books if I can. And I chose a theme called Valentine's Day coming up like. And the poems, most of them have to do with some kind of love, not some romantic love, but not necessarily only that, you know, love of parent and child and siblings and even love of a job, you know, like love of carpentry or love of writing. So the first poem I'm going to read is, I guess it's dedicated to my late spouse, although the dedication in this book, in A Fair Screenplay, seems to have dropped off somehow. That would be my fault. But anyway, it's called Chinese Gardens, UWI. Some of the poems have to do with UWI, which I suppose is not surprising because I was around here for a while, writing a PhD thesis for about 20 years. Chinese Gardens, UWI. Eden each morning as this place wakes to praise, cobwebs crocheted into the grass, all foliage wet with the beads of birth. I come feet naked to the sun, my children's footsteps splashing green seduce my loins, sweeter than lust. Another life, another life. The condom garlands on the ground proclaim the irony at me, but they are dead. This garden's calm chinoiserie contains no passions. And I smile back for the tight buds, the lizard's egg, bird's nest, the glow behind the hill are things about to be. It's time this garden bred something beyond the transient tremors of an undergraduate lust. Well, time we planted something here deep as a tomb, some seed intent on growing. I call my children to my knees and bless their new lives one by one. A small breeze carries summonses. We come. The next poem is called Jesus Meets His Mother, and it comes from The Man, yes, not The Man, a performance poem, the first book that I wrote in my New Testament trilogy. It was not written to be a book, it was written to be performed, again, connections to UWI, at St. Thomas Aquinas, which is a Catholic church that is connected to the University of the West Indies, Mona. The poem needs a little bit of a context. It's the story of Jesus's crucifixion as reported by two people who stand and watch and talk about what is going on with what is being done to Jesus. And in this particular case, the poem is called Jesus Meets His Mother because one of the two people, an older man named Samuel, the other one is a younger middle-aged woman named Naomi. Samuel is disabled, but he had the good fortune of having Joseph, Jesus's foster father, teach him carpentry, never mind his disability. So when Jesus was a little boy, he had the opportunity of watching Jesus grow and watching Mary as she grew him, as we would say in Jamaica. She was growing him up and Samuel was watching him and watching her. And at this particular point in the crucifixion story, Jesus and his mother meet and Samuel watches the meeting and reports on it. So over to you, Blacka. Samuel, Mr. Samuel.
Jesus meets his mother. When this little child was a boy, he was apprenticed to him, pa. Real funny apprentice. Me was a big man, 40 plus, with one hand twist, the next one chop off at the wrist. But that man, Joseph, teach me how to use hammer and saw and chisel with my twist hand and my stump. Still, it's the lady Mary that me couldn't take me to hide them from. And so me watch her, so she watched that child. And all the while she going on doing what she have to do, me can't explain to you. It's like she know this child is the most precious thing. And like, just how him running up and down, chasing him ball, she's seeing him dying right there as she look. So me just have to do a little jostling here today. Me know just now she's seeing before her eyes what she was looking at all them years. See? It's the self-same countenance she gazing on with him. She gazing on him with. And him, oh Jesus, don't look upon her so. She know you love her right down to your toe. She know you never want to leave her so. She know just say it's so it have to go. From you was a little Jesus. Jesus. Did she know? What do you,
Thanks, Blacka. Um, just rushing on now. The next poem, pardon, the next poem is again a love poem. This one is a love of calling, and I guess my love for my late spouse. It is dedicated. This time the dedication make it into the book. So it's called Shooting the Horses, and there are other meanings of shooting the horses, one of which have to do with basketball and the other of which have to do with heroin. And I will say that Martin loved photography so much that it was a kind of drug. So here goes with Shooting the Horses for Martin Manley. At dawn, he rose early again and went after the horses. He traps them, manes glowing, ripe tangerine like Tintoretto, apocalypse horses of morning, snap, snap with his little black box, shoots the world as it was the first day, green gold with strong legs and a moon to be tossed and the damp Mona plains to be eaten like fire. And what do you seek, my beloved, in the seed of the day when the tenderest shoot of green light breaks the earth of the dark? What coin pulls you wet from me, clutching your little machine, obliging you capture the crucified trees, their crosses of shadows haunting the rest of this Sabbath? Is it wisdom or hope that you stalk? Would you have me walk with you? Shall I sleep as you follow the hooves of those shadows, the footprints of mountains, the musk of the mist, the tracks of the earliest earth? I will leave you, my love. It was Eve who first murdered the morning. Blacka reads the next poem, which is from my fourth book, The True Blue of Islands. I wrote it, the whole book, as a wake for my brother Richard, my late brother, who was murdered in Jamaica, in close to Botany Bay in Portland, for no apparent reason in 2004. It's called Everybody Get Flat, a dub, and you take it away, Blacka.
Where is the poem that explains what happens to you when they shoot your brother and you hear that his brain spilled open the seat, the back of the car, and you have to tell folks, no, it wasn't a war. No, he wasn't caught in a crossfire. No, it wasn't a fight. Yes, it happened that night, but no, not in town, out in the country, not a God's soul around. No, he didn't launder money. No, he wasn't into dope. Just a man with a plan and a fervent hope. What was the motive? The police can't find not a rhyme nor reason why they killed the man. Just a random execution. So no, we don't have a clue why he might have been killed. Yes, I guess you could say God must have willed it. What? God willed it? No, the priest said. God don't will no slaughtered dead. God allow us our own way. So we turn into a place with a theme song that says everybody gets flat. Dog coming through. And dog mean gun. And it's all in fun. Don't mind poor people have to run. Down in the ghetto every God sent day from the teeth of the dog. But I guess we have a way to grit our teeth and carry on through till a bullet come and you pray it's not for you. Thank you.
A hard poem to hear you read, Blacka, but I guess we have to deal with hard things sometimes. Thanks for the read. Yarn Spinner, which is the next poem, is a poem that uses the image of spinning yarn for writing. And I talked about love for the calling. We have, I think, certainly we have 3 poets here who are yarn spinners, and Rachel in writing and in another medium is a yarn spinner too. Yarn spinner from Subversive Sonnets, and still reading from their screenplays. Inside, she sits and spins, decanting gold and silver from her wrists. Her fingers bleed. Day and then night. I'll take it from the top again. Yarn spinner. Inside, she sits and spins, decanting gold and silver from her wrists. Her fingers bleed. Day and then night. Myriad windows perch above her head, brilliant birds. Through them, she cannot see the river pirouette from a valley hung high, tumble, kneel deep into a basin blue as chiming bells set in obsidian rocks. Night and then day. But she cannot observe the stars, the sun. She scoffs air, laps sweat off her chin, straining to listen, finds she cannot hear even the wind. The walls leach marrow from her bones. The room adjusts around her shrinking frame of mind. She teases out a winking thread, curls it about a spool, then reels and comes again. Rich filaments bite through her skin as she construes the pile of unspun wool, rovings of thought, symbols of winding cord, strings she makes hum. Imagine up a poem to twist the tongue, cable to match a letter to a sound, a drill that interweaves syntax of word and necessary word, a song to bring a measured meter to the hands that drum on ancient wood. But this can't be a life. Flapping flamboyant wings, the windows preen and squawk, a flock cruising landscapes she will not see again. The river in the sun spits, spurts, explodes, resplendent as a veil let fall to hide a bride. Marry she won't, locked in this tower where time goes. Her green skin crawls, fluted as wrinkled sea. Once she was brown and curious in the world. Now her illumination is a frosted bulb on a high wire. How did she come to this? Within, without an inkling of out, intent on weaving meaning as she strips it from herself. And still she feeds the iridescent mound, so thick and plentiful, it steals the light. And are you sad alone? Not when I spin. And are you sorry for the yarns you make? No, for they keep the children warm. What if you die spinning a thread? Die, yes, but never dead. The next poem is a bona fide love poem. It's a proposal, the biggest proposal ever, right? God Almighty, the one that runs things, send an angel, not an angel, an archangel, Gabriel, one of the three big ones, Michael is L, L, that L is important. Michael and Raphael and Gabriel. So it's Gabriel himself to ask a young Jewish maid if she would be his baby mother. So Archangel Gabriel speaks to Mary from the Book of Mary, a performance poem. And here is Ellis Blacka to deliver the Archangel's message.
Archangel Gabriel speaks to Mary. How do you do, Holy One? A voice sound all around like it comes from deep down in the womb, in the tomb of a drum. Cold sweat wash my whole body same time. Big freight catch me. I frighten and shake, hold my breath as I wait for the far up and far down all around speaker to speak. Child, you fill up the eye of the great El Shaddai. Out of all humankind, the plain good of you picking in heart. It looked like you same one is to have a star part in a mystery play him write a script for. So him send me across the deep black of sky a few billion cubits to ask you to be so good as to grant him urgent plea. When him talk, him voice eat like a hummingbird wing. Jaja, no, it's not any small thing required of you. That is why I am asking you down on my knees. He said to make sure to ask so, and ask if you please. So sweet lady, speaking for Elohim, most high, I fly over to ask that you make a small fry, singling, a picnic that will wring every joy from the earth, every ache from your heart. Your belly going to swell up with Yeshua, God send of the world. But it's your choice to make. It's your amen to say. I am Archangel asking, no mind them insist I am Gabriel announcing. These earth creatures have love to take things and twist them truth. I'm who I'm over on, the great one who run things. Say it's choose, you must choose. But for sure he would glad if you grant him the yes and send me back home with a yes. Bless.
Thank you, Mr. Archangel Gabriel. The last two poems come from the book of Joseph. The book of Joseph, which we are also celebrating, launching today. And they are both spoken by Joseph, but since Blacka and I have been bouncing, ping-ponging back and forth, I am going to pretend to be Joseph and read the first poem, and Blacka will read the second final poem. The poems in this book have numbers rather than titles, and this first poem is number oops, I think it's number 8. Yes, sorry, it's number 8. I had a good time writing the book of Joseph. Not a lot about Joseph appears in the New Testament. So me get to make up a whole heap of things. I mean, make up a whole heap of things. Me give Joseph a first wife, a spunky lady named Deborah. Anyhow, none of the poems there is about Deborah. This poem is about Joseph learning to be a carpenter, because in my version, my dub, Joseph's family start out as shepherds. And I had been writing for a while, and then it occurred to me that maybe that explained why Jesus talked about lamb and sheep so much. Anyhow, this is not in the New Testament. This is Pam making up things. They start out as shepherds, and then foot rot take out the whole flock. So then they have to look to do something else to earn a living. So that is when they decide that they are going to turn to carpentry. Tekton, which is the word in the New Testament for carpenter, in fact, does not mean, strictly speaking, a person who works in wood. It means a person who works in wood as well as stone. For in them part of the world, it don't have plenty wood, not enough to keep carpenters busy the whole time. And also the towns were small, so it wasn't going to be a big need for carpentry. The other thing, though, that Tekton did was he worked in stone, and there were lots of quarries. So there was plenty, a good set of resources, for the stonemason to work with. Anyhow, this is Mr. Joseph as he learns to be a carpenter, having been a shepherd before. Was a long time before me discovered the life of the wood. It sweet me nose right from the start. As the shavings curl up from the plain, sliding through down the grain of cedar or acacia or pine, them summon the earth and the wide open sky and the growing of green. All the same, me work wood for more than 3 years before a shape sing down my arm, connect with the board, make the bloom of itself. Before me hearken as wood yield and reply to the hammer, the saw, and the plane. And finally, Blacka reads number 107, which is, again, Pam making up things. We speak of the hidden years during which the Bible, the New Testament, don't tell us what Jesus was doing. But there are traditions in other places, for instance, India, where there's a monastery where there was one Issa, at about the time Jesus might have been wandering. So in my story, Jesus takes off and he goes to Alexandria and sees the Isle of Pharos, and he goes to a place called Barigaza on the west coast of India. And at this point, Jesus is coming back home. And Joseph sight him sight a familiar looking figure. And so Blacka, please to take away number 107, as Joseph sees Jesus coming home after many long years.
Number 107. Little most me never know him. Jesus brown till him black. Him hair long down him back. Lines crisscross him forehead and crimp him eye corner. Him cheek them sucking. Dust cover him hand, foot, sandal and clothes. Me was not sure if it was him defeating the hill 1 foot, then the next. But me shout and inquire, who asking if me is me? Oh, Pa Joe, is you? Of course, me is me. After me couldn't be anybody else. Questions stand in the air between us for a while. As two of we smile. Me run out and hug up the foreign body, saying him is my son. Feel the grit of the journey. See dirty in him beard, in him ears, in him hair. Son, you best come inside. Best wash off your face and your hand and your foot. You're not going to distress to see you like that. Then, me better don't preach, look at the outward, but look to the heart. And them grin, the mischief, him did learn from the thieving black puss. Thank you for the applause.
Thank you very much, Blacka, for sharing the reading with me. Most grateful.
It was my pleasure.
All right. Hello, everyone. Dr. Mosley Wood apologizes for her brief absence due to internet difficulties, but I do believe she's back now. So please pardon the brief moment of silence as she rejoins us.
Hello again. Yes, I'm back. My apologies for that. Thank you for stepping in, Whitney. So I think that you would have completed the poetry reading, Pam and Owen. Okay, right. So we are going to move very quickly now into the conversation between Tanya Shirley and Pamela Mordecai. And if Pamela is family, well, Tanya must be like her sister, because Tanya is no stranger to the Department of Literatures in English. Tanya, as many of you know, has published 2 poetry collections with Peepal Tree Press in the UK, She Who Sleeps with Bones and The Merchant of Feathers. Her work has been featured on BBC World Service, BBC Front Row, Scottish Poetry Library, the Poetry Archive, and has been translated into Spanish and Polish. Shirley is a former lecturer in the Department of Literatures in English, and she is a recipient of a Silver Musgrave Medal from the Institute of Jamaica for her outstanding contribution in the field of literature. Tanya, Pamela, please go ahead.
Thanks, Rochelle. Pamela and Owen, thank you. Blacka, thank you for that brilliant reading. Pamela, what an honor to be able to chat with you today. And you know we could chat for hours. So based on time constraints, I tried to limit my questions to questions that I thought would be particularly useful for the university's creative writing and literature students. So I want to start off with something I know emerging writers struggle with, and that is being vulnerable, being brave, and writing based on their own life experiences. From your very first collection, Journey Poem, published in 1989, you have poems which we read as fiction, but that we can infer are about your actual family members. Why is it important to you, especially within the context of Caribbean literature, to trace your lineage, to deconstruct this binary between private and public, to include family history, to talk about topics that are arguably still somewhat taboo in the Caribbean, such as mental illness and how it affects the family unit. And a very loaded question, but I'm really asking you, I think of you as a very brave writer, and you write things that I think a lot of writers are still uncomfortable writing about. So why is that important to you?
Well, boy, Tanya, that is plenty question, All right.
Just choose one part of it and jump in.
About lineage, I think you have to know where you come from before you can know where you're going. So, and our stories, like, I think how I would have loved to get my grandma on tape, my great grandma on tape. I invent stories for these ancestors because I didn't hear their stories. I think that knowing where you come in your own family, knowing where you come in your little community, if you want, your tribe, if this were a different cultural circumstance, that is important. How you going to know who you are if you don't know, who your granny was, or who your daddy was? Never mind who he might have been, I don't care. But it is necessary for you to know where you stand in that wonderful flow that takes us right back to Kibish in West Africa, where the first known human woman was. Well, that's absurd. But what I'm trying to say is that to place yourself in a context, for me, I think is important. And I think that for all human beings, we need to know where we are now in community, but we certainly need to know where we're coming from if we're to have some kind of direction to go in. The difficult things, the writing out of your experience. My very, very first poem was about a hard thing. Hurricane Charlie hit Jamaica in 1951, and I was age 9. And I wrote a poem, and it go like this: terror and horror that it was, for sadness and sorrow it did and it does. For sadness and sorrow was all that it sought, and sadness and sorrow was all that it brought. It made many losses for man, woman, and child, for it hadn't any buses to tell it, be mild. It just blew and blew till it hurried all through all of its stages like a book through its pages. Well, I was age 9, and that was a hard thing. And my age 9 person found that a poem was a way to deal with this hard thing. I don't know why we have music, we have poets, Bob Marley, Jimmy Cliff, poets who sing their poems, if you want. And we don't have a problem with Bob singing about, like no woman, no cry. Nobody's don't say, well, why is Bob, singing about this thing, this awful thing? No, we understand. We understand the impulse to deal with a hard thing in song, redemption song, same thing. So I don't know why poets should feel constrained not to speak of certain things. May not feel no way. If what many people have mental health challenges, why should I not speak about them? I think I'm certifiable. My 3rd collection of poetry is called Certifiable. And that is what it talks, that's what it means, right? I mean, form to me anytime. I probably deserve to be in an institution right now. I think that it is, if poets, writers are to vision for people, and I think that I like to think of a poet, a writer as a prophet. And that is what prophets do. They vision for the people. They speak about hard things. Look, most people have a hard life more than happy life, aren't most of our lives difficult? So I make no apology for, you spoke of the bridging the private and the public. Internet come. So all of us who used to think we had private things, all we need to do is go upon the internet and we will see that all we thought was private is very, very public these days. So, I mean, seriously, you go on the internet and you find that your grandfather impregnated your grandma when she was age, 16. And that in fact, she had the first, baby when she was 5 months married. Listen to me, this is a state of things. I do not see why we must apologize for absolutely human things, absolutely human difficulties, the suffering that so many of us share. I can't see why we should not share it. I can't see why we should not speak of it publicly. I can't see where this hurts. I think that it is a way to help. So that would kind of be my answer. Is that
excellent? I think that would be useful for emerging creative writers. Not what I plan to ask you, but you have a poem that ends, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I am loose, uncertified.
Yes.
And that idea of the woman who is uncertified, you don't know what to expect. Do you think using that as a recurring persona allows the poems to do more truth speaking? Because this idea of the woman who is unhinged, she can say anything. Do you feel that you use that figure to almost subconsciously get away with saying certain things? Talk to me about that, unhinged woman figure in the poems.
Of course, I am an unhinged woman. These days, you know what to say. These days, I say, I am an old woman, so I get to be unhinged, right? But no, I think I gave myself permission. I gave myself permission to just speak about the things that I thought were important, no matter how harsh they were, right? I did. And again, I don't apologize for that. One cannot tell a writer or a poet what to write about. One can only ask that what is spoken about should be true, right? Should speak from the heart to the heart, which is how I like to think of truth, that kind of truth. So yeah, I'm a crazy lady. I get to say what I want in my poetry as long as I'm respectful and not offensive.
I love that. And just reminding our students that they have this permission to speak their truth. So I want to follow that thread of being brave as a writer. Your poetry explores some really traumatic themes: sexual abuse, crime and violence, racism, etc. I'm thinking of poems such as The Story of Nellie, Blacka read Everybody Get Flat a Dub, and The True Blue of Islands. According to Stephen Beatty in his review of A Fair Screenplays, the poet's musicality counterpoints her often horrific subject matter. Do the poems come to you with their music? How does music serve you as a poet as you're exploring difficult themes? So really, I'm talking about the influence. I'm asking you about the influence of music. Is the music coming to you at the same time that these difficult subject matters are coming to you? And if you could also touch a little bit on your use of rhyme, because I find that you have a very organic and sophisticated way of using rhyme. So I don't know if you want to also touch on that a bit.
Well, okay, Tanya. Wow. A lot of the Ryder Cross to Banbury Cross, those little nursery things, apparently when they were made up, have some horrific. But we've lost the meanings over time. But some of them refer to awful things, war and plague and so on. At least. So I have read. And also I have to say that I think of myself as starting out as a person writing children's poems. My father used to read us a poem every night before we went to bed. And so if I'm a poet, it's sake of Miss Lou and sake of my daddy reading me poems, reading us poems every night before bed. So, and those were poems that were, they're poems for children. So they have rhyme and rhythm as important elements. In fact, if I can write sonnets, it's because I can write pig poem, which goes, a pig is big, a pig is fat, a pig is not a thing to pat. A pig is big, a pig is wide, a pig is not a thing to ride. And the music and the rhyming are organic when you're writing children's poems. They are, right? I mean, nowadays there are poems in free verse, wonderful poems for children in free verse. But also I have to go back to Bob Marley and Redemption Song and No Woman No Cry. Those are the poems, they are poems. Those are songs that prize and therefore musical, absolutely. But they prize those things. They prize rhyme, sometimes intricate rhyme, certainly organic rhyme. So I don't think that's anything that's new. It's just because we make these marks, we say, okay, Bob Marley is a singer, right? Bob Marley is a poet, okay? So he's a poet who is singing his poems. And therefore, for me, between the Picnic them and between our music, our Jamaican music, it is, I see myself as, part of all of that, not different or separate, but part. If I blossom, it is because I am rooted in that.
So, for example, a poem like The Story of Nellie, such a difficult, subject matter. Did that poem come to you in terms of the story of Nellie, and then you thought, I need that nursery rhyme rhythm to act as a counterpoint, or did Nellie's story come to you with this nursery rhyme rhythm?
Nellie's story begins with a little girl. She's a little girl, I think, and she is saving the condensed milk in the bottom of our cocoa, right? So it comes as a story of a child, and therefore it comes with the rhythm of that kind of poem, right? I think it came with its rhythm because it came out of that context.
Yeah. But it's a useful tool for students, and emerging writers to remember how rhythm and music can work alongside theme, because as much as that's a sing-song rhythm, it actually, for me, strengthens the tragedy or adds an element of irony to the tragedy in the poem. So, all right. So one of the things I love about this collection of new and selected poems is having excerpts from your books in one place. And I think it allows us to really appreciate your stylistic range. You get to see the influence of Louise Bennett, Derek Walcott, Kamau Brathwaite, William Shakespeare. We see the poems range from persona poems, prose poems, narrative poems, dramatic monologues. So I want you to talk a little bit to us about your process in terms of structure and style. At what point do you decide on structure? At what point do you decide on a central motif? For example, blue appears in many of the poems, the true blue of islands, and just such a witty way of using the color blue. So I don't know if, as you're talking about your process in terms of how you structure your poems, if you maybe just want to talk about the relevance of blue to you.
Can you ask hard questions, man? I'm old. You have to work up my brain too much.
Well, I have you here. You have all this knowledge, so I have to get the knowledge from you.
Well, I will do my best. I sometimes say I am a very undeliberate writer. I think there is an element of magic to this thing. And I think one of the things that starting writers have to understand is like, you're learning to float and somebody hand under you the whole time, and then the hand just leave, and you take the moment, you seize the moment, you say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to make my belly sink in, and I'm not going to make my head go under the water. I just go and lie flat. There's a moment like that where you see, you just decide to do the thing. I think that, yeah, the deciding, it's almost as though it's done for me. I don't know if that is helpful, but I think that it is a true thing. You are a poet. Blacka is a poet. It is a true thing that there is not a little bit of magic, that you start out learning to recognize the magic, and you have to allow that there is magic in this whole thing of using words. So that's one thing, I think, that it is not a bad thing for the beginning poet to recognize that there is a bit of magic in it. But I think also in terms of the deliberateness, and for instance, the use of blue, to be honest with you, Tanya, if you had said, somebody said the other day that colors are very important to me, and I thought, colors are important to me. I am undeliberate.
Yes.
Those things sneak in. And then I started to think of the titles of the books: Pink Icing, Red Jacket, True Blue of Islands, Fierce Green Place. I said, well, you idiot, clearly the colors must be. And then I remember one thing. I remember, because this is an image of which I am very proud, the blue dirt for the sea in the Caribbean, that the ancestors who were tossed over the sides of the slave ships were buried in blue dirt. So I know about that blue, right? And I know about that image. But I think that that you also have to write, right? Just write. Put it. Martin always used to say, husband, put it on the page. Don't agonize so much. You can work on something that's down there. And I think that again might be useful to beginning writers. Don't stand there crippled with your pen thinking, I have to get this perfect. I have to know what I'm doing. Write, just write down. You want to write a poem about your granny. Well, write the things that you remember about your granny, the things that, you hold in your belly, the things that made you feel strongly. Maybe she was a horrible woman. Write that down, right? And then you go back to it, and then you work on it, because that's how I work. That's how all of us work. Put it down, right? But I can't really tell you that blue is a color of which I am fond. Actually, blue is not a color of which I am fond, but blue finds its way into any poet in the Caribbean is going to write. Blue sea, blue sky, so many other blues are there. Blues of the song blues. I am undeliberate. That is my final position. The thing is, to a certain extent, once you get the hang of it, the poems sort of begin to write themselves. They bubble up from inside of you. You just have to recognize the bubbling, and you have to accept it, and you have to say, okay, something is bubbling here. It is about my horrible granny, or it is bubbling and it is about my wonderful, wonderful granny, the only person in my whole family who loved me. You let it bubble. And then as it is bubbling, then maybe it shows you a shape. It might have a rhyme and another rhyme. The rhymes might happen, and then you see them happening. I don't know how useful I can be, how much more useful, because I come back to the point of saying that I'm undeliberate. Having said that, you're going to say to me, but Pam, you write sonnets. But Pam, you write a whole book in tercets of Anapest. When you get to the point where you are not a beginning writer anymore, then I think the process changes, right? Okay. Or if you want, and this is not a bad way to start, to write poems for children, to write a pig is big, a pig is fat, a pig is not the thing to pat. Write poems for children, learn that way. That is how I think I learned a lot of the skills that I have.
So things I'll take away from that, you mentioned the poems bubbling up inside you, and then you said something about the poems you store in your belly. And I'm a strong believer that the poems come out of the body. And so it is to really just be in tune with the rhythms of the body, with your breath, with the things that we store as body memory. But the other thing I'll say is, yes, it's magic, but it's also, you can tell from your work that you have studied your craft. I remember I was reading one of your poems and I thought, oh, I can do my syllabic count here. There's prosody. And so there is that craft there. So it's for me, a lot of it is when that magic combines with the studying and knowledge of craft. You'd agree with that?
Yes.
All right. Well, okay.
Absolutely. That's why I keep coming back to the children's poems, because that people dismiss them. People think, oh, it's so easy to write a children's poem. It is not so easy to write a children's poem, but you have in your body memory the poems you heard when you were a child, and they are there. They are imprinted in your belly. They're imprinted in the belly of your memory, and you have that to call on. So there is absolutely craft. But as I say, if you want to learn to write a sonnet, learn to write a pig is big, a pig is fat, a pig is not a thing to pat. Because it's intimately related. It begins there with the little children's ditty, if you want, and it ends with being able to write, oh, I don't know what, read one line from one of the sonnets. There are scars carved on my soul, these friends with heads chopped off. Oh dear, the hard things. Richard named like my brother not long before, shot through his gut. So who want to go first? It's the prosody is there, but because I love song, because I call literature, I call it now song and story. That's what I call it. And so, yes, the craft is absolutely there. Use of rhythm, use of rhyme, use of wordplay, use of metaphor, all of that. I don't know.
Right, so let's jump to this one. Female sexuality is portrayed in such a nuanced way in your poems. There's a relationship between female sexuality and religion, patriarchy, the landscape, etc. So I want to ask you, though, about the portrayal of the erotic in your work. There are poems, even in the book of Joseph, where we probably wouldn't expect those poems, where women embrace the sex act, celebrate their bodies, where poetry emerging from a woman is an erotic act. Poems such as Poems Grow, Dust. What is the relationship that you have or are interested in showing between poetry and the female erotic? And I'm watching time. I don't want them to kick us off. So let me hear what you think.
I asked you for an easy question.
No, this one is easy for you because it's all over your work, this celebration of female sexuality.
Okay, if you say so. No. Again. I don't think of this as a hard thing, as a difficult, or. Why should it be difficult? I mean, Shakespeare is talking about all kind of erotic business the whole time, and many a man before him and many a man after, right? So why should women not, why should Deborah, Joseph's first wife, not tell him that she did not marry him to lie down with a cat, right? She married him to lie down with him, and then she pushes him down on the mat. Why not, right? Why not? I think that women, much more than a function of a reproductive function. Women are persons with bodies. Women are persons who must have joy in their bodies. Why? Absolutely not, right? Mm-hmm. My mother never told me to have joy in my body. So my mother never told me that my body was mine to do with what I wanted to do. Hence, all kinds of depredations on the poor body. But my daughter has told her daughter all about her body. And that is absolutely crucially important. Even if the erotic in my poetry merely contributes to that kind of freedom, I think that is an important thing. Women are embodied human beings, and they are embodied in female bodies. And why should we not celebrate that? And why should we not, however we perceive ourselves on the line of gender, however we are in the world, why should we not celebrate our sexual beings? Why should that be something that women do not do? I think it's absurd. So if it's there in the poetry, that is very deliberate, absolutely, because one of my prayers at the present time is May we be happy in our sexual bodies. I really think that if all the sex in the world was mostly good sex, we would not be fighting wars. We would not be killing each other. We would be having good sex most of the time.
I wish we could end on that note, but I want to end on this one. So I have a million more questions, but we have to end with this one. I don't think we talk enough about love as a radical weapon / tool in post-colonial poetry. So you have poems that chronicle the fall of young girls who are just looking for a little loving in the absence of parental affection, poems that examine the lack of love in the educational system, poems that present love as a subversive act. There's a Rastafarian sensibility of love and livity as core principles in your work. How does love function as a radical response to the effects of colonialism in your work? And how does love itself as a concept influence your approach to poetry?
Well, I hope that love itself as a concept influences my approach to everything, to my life. No. If there is deliberateness, I would have to be there, right? Because I come from a time when people were afraid of Rastas. I come into a time when there is such a fullness in the way that in what Rasta has contributed to philosophy, to our understanding of a way of living in the earth and with one another. One love, peace and love. Those are greetings that are Rastafarian. Rasta has taught us about the love of the New Testament, perhaps better than some of the preachers in their pulpits, right? Unless love is a lived thing, it ain't really nothing, right? I had an uncle who was a priest, and he used to say, love is to act to secure the well-being of the one you love. That is what love is. It's not a pounding heart. It is not, thinking about the person that you love the whole time, except to secure their well-being. So you love, and if you love, then you think about how can I act so that my beloved is well and is happy and is delighted in him or herself? How can I help my beloved to live well in the world, not live rich, but to live and breathe the air and be glad of each breath that my beloved is taking? That is what I want to do. So yes, is love. All of it is love, is love, is love. And I'm going to read the end of a poem, a hard, horrible poem called Poor Execution, about so many of my friends and my brother included. So many people who have been murdered in so many horrible ways. And the poem ends, call the roll of thousands, and there is no lesson we can learn but that we did not do for our fellows, for our brethren, sistren, all we needed to. We didn't love them, and we will keep on dying until we do, because we will, until the whole thing is love, until we truly love our neighbor, beginning with the person that we're sleeping with, the person we have given a baby to, the person who has given us a baby, the child who has come out of that union, until we love one another, until we do the Rasta thing, until we do the thing that is central really to all religion, which is a horrible word, but we talk all the time, we'll see how these Christians love one another, the great commandment of the new law, to love the Lord and to love your neighbor as yourself. Well, those are empty words. If we look at the world, if we look at the Christian world, those words are empty. Forget this Jesus telling us to love one another, So love is absolutely important. If the message is love, if what the poems talk about is love, if what the poems celebrate is love, whether it's man making love to woman, woman making love to man, whatever, as long as it's love, it is very deliberately there.
Perfect. And I just want to end by directing our audience to a few areas that we couldn't touch on today, but I think are really worth studying in your work. Your use of humor as a survival strategy, the use of the protest poem and the recurring call to action against exploitative practices, the depiction of the landscape, the exploration of body poetics, your use of Jamaican Creole, etc., etc. Pam, what a pleasure. Thank you for giving me this honor.
I need to say thanks to you, Tanya, for just being so generous as to write the afterword and so generous as to look so closely at the work. For me, it hasn't happened all that often. No, not a lot of criticism on my work. So absolutely to thank you so very much, and to thank the editors for deciding that they wanted to do this project, to thank all the people who made it happen, to thank the people who have made this afternoon happen, beginning with Dr. Rachel Mosley Wood and the person supporting her in the Department of Literatures in English, to thank the MonaMedia for enabling us to be on air, to be present in the world in all kinds of places, not just here, to thank Blacka, Ellis, Sir Owen Augustus, who is my longtime friend, and to thank all the people who have come. I hope that I have thanked everyone. If you ought to have been thanked and I have not thanked you, please know deep in my heart, I am grateful, absolutely. And I'm grateful to be a poet. What a delightful thing to be in one's life.
Thank you so much, Pam. And thank you, Tanya. That conversation was as riveting as the poems, the reading of the poems themselves. Pam, I'm going to just ask you now to read for us the closing poem, but I will come back after you've read that. So those who are online, don't go away yet. But I'm going to ask Pam to now read A Poem is a Power.
A poem? A poem is a power. This is for Retabile Masilo, who is a poet from Lesotho, who lives in Paris and knows a lot about Caribbean poetry. He's translated some of my sonnets into French. He is linguistically very versatile, obviously. I have never met him, but you know, when is love, still, you can know him. I know him well, never having met the man face to face. A poem is a power. A poem is a power. Invoke it and run the devil. Watch it good. See traces of the first word on it still. Numinous, it will eclipse the moon, call up mists, halt the sun in high heaven. Listen. Hear it tell sounds we make with our mouth when we propose, with our hip when we dispose. So use a poem loud for laughter, as a sigh after ecstasy, time and again for praise. Set it like balm between you and bad mind with your neighbor. Cause it to gather, all who take a knee for justice, all who genuflect in prayer, all who bow to murder. Blood bled to born, blood shed to die. All this in a poem is not too great a weight.
Thank you, Pam. And let me thank Tanya Shirley and Owen Blacka Ellis for participating in the book launch. Tanya, I mean, I'm glad you asked those hard questions because Pamela, I mean, your answers and responses were so illuminating. And many of you out there may know that the department has a program in creative writing. We offer a minor in creative writing. And we found that many students across the faculty and in other faculties as well are interested in creative writing. And I think that what you had to say will be of such great interest to them and great encouragement to them as they struggle to perfect and improve their craft. So thank you. Thank you for that conversation, Tanya. You know, the word is love. Really, that is the final word. That is what we're all about, and that's what we're strive for. So thank you, Pam, for saying that. And I personally think that you know, I'm going to ask my students maybe to do a research paper on whether or not the lack of good sex is the reason behind so many of these violent conflicts we're having. I mean, if as you propose, Pamela, that is the reason for war. And we have all this crime in Jamaica. I you know, lots of, you know, food for thought there. But thank you for those words. And Owen, Blacka, Ellis, thank you for reading the poems. You're now in the family. You always were, actually. Thank you for that excellent reading of the poems and for making them just jump off the page and come alive for us. They really were from heart to heart. I want to thank as well Whitney Eaton, the research assistant in the department, for jumping in so ably and for all the work and preparation she has done for this event. And also, of course, Miss Antoinette Jackson, our secretary in the department, who, you know, often others out there do not see her face, but she really is there working very hard, very ably, and very diligently behind the scenes to ensure that events like this get going and proceed smoothly. And of course, we thank UWI MonaMedia for hosting this event on UETV and on YouTube. And before we go, I know it has been posted in the chat several times, but just let me mention to you and direct you to Amazon.com, where you can purchase the two books that we have launched, A Fair Screen Placed and The Book of Joseph. And the publishers of the Book of Joseph, Mawenzi House, they're having a special offer. The information has been posted on the chat, but if you go onto their website and put in the coupon code Joseph, you'll get a special offer on the book of Joseph. Was that correct information, Pamela?
I think so, yes. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
I think, yes.
All right. Okay, so that's it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again sometime for our next event, which will be the Edward Ball Distinguished Lecture coming up in March. We'll be in touch with that. And thank you once again, Tanya and Blacka, for participating. And Pam, you do us a great honor by allowing us to launch your two books. Thank you.